Hey, it's Gray McKenzie here. I'm the founder at ZenPilot, and this is another video in our series on the ZenPilot methodology, which I've got pulled up here, and we'll bounce back and forth between these two screens. How does your team prioritize work right now? I want to talk through the importance of having a shared prioritization approach and why I think due dates for most teams is the best solution. Totally open to having other systems as long as that actually makes sense in your context and it's intentional. But what I'm after is a system where each person on your team can log in the morning as part of their startup routine that hopefully is shared, it's prescriptive, everybody in your organization does the same type of startup routine. There's probably components that look different for everybody, but everyone's got a shared base level that's all the same. And so they're logging in and saying, okay, here's what's on my plate today. I can see roughly how long that's going to take. And I'm already thinking through, oh no, I'm overburdened. Like I'm going to have to make some prioritization choices and reflect that out to the rest of the team as well by having it here in the system. Or, wow, this is great. I only have 6 hours of scheduled work today. Plus, I'm usually faster than this at getting it done. Like I've got some room to either work ahead or go help somebody else out. So that's what we're after, is giving everybody on your team that gift of knowing what's on my plate today, what are the priorities across the team, how do I get that stuff done, so that they know how to attack the day and do their best work. Again, what we're after is building teams that are more productive, more profitable, and healthier. So let's just dig into this real quickly. Here's the quick argument. So if we zoom out on the methodology, we talked about embracing a single source of truth. Today I want to talk about prioritizing work using due dates. The premise here, nobody's going to disagree, right? Every team needs a shared approach to how you prioritize your work. I've seen this take so many different formats. Most common is like, hey, we don't have anything that's explicit. Instead, it's just assumed. This is kind of part of our culture. Hey, we use daily stand-ups, and so we are still updating a project management system, but that's not a true reflection. Like the question, the self-assessment for you to ask yourself is, if I pulled up, not knowing your team, if I pulled up your project management system today, how close to the pin am I on what the true priorities are? Is that reflected in the tasks? In whatever system, you might be running sprints, you might be running a due date driven system as well, but is that actually true? That where you're spending your time is on the things that are on the biggest priorities, and that's reflected accurately in your project management system? If the answer, if you just grade yourself on that on a scale of 1 to 10, and if the answer to that is under an 8, then you get some substantial work to do. I would rather have you go use sticky notes ordered vertically versus having a PM system that doesn't really make sense. So the goal is to have a shared approach. Now, here's what I mean when we talk about prioritizing work using due dates. The catchphrase that we're trying to use or try to instill in almost each of these principles have one specific catchphrase that we're trying to go to, is we say all the time, the due date equals the due date. And that means every task that gets done, or every task in the system, number one, should have a due date. So, and we've got a way to catch, using a QA dashboard, we've got a way to catch any tasks that are currently missing due dates. So in this case, there's 28 tasks in this system that don't have a due date tied to them, that probably should have a due date tied to them, or they're in planning status. We talk more about planning. The basic idea is like, hey, there's some stuff that we want to make sure we capture. We throw it in there, but we've decided to not tackle it for now, and we don't know where it should get scheduled. There's a separate status that should sit in, so and that'll get filtered out of this dashboard ultimately as well. But what we're after is the due date, DUE, is the DO due date. Like it will be done on that day, or it'll be done early, so that we can keep this project moving. And if it's not, when exceptions happen, and yes, they do, that's for sure going to happen, we need to have rules for how we handle those things that are behind and get back on track. So an example is if I've got, let's say I get to, my day here, and I've got 110 overdue tasks in this scenario. This is the downside of having a demo spaces. It's not that realistic. But let's say that we've got 2 overdue tasks or something. I can never go back and do work in the past unless someone else has time travel. So if we were looking at a workload view, someone was trying to look at workload, it all gets thrown off if I have 110 tasks. Let's just collapse this section for a second. Actually, we'll scroll to the bottom of this section. Let's just see what the total time estimate of all these overdue tasks is. So we're going to load 110 overdue tasks here. and our total time estimate is 127 hours, 45 minutes. If we go look at workload, it's not going to show me my workload for today is 127 plus 30 minutes if this was today, right? It's just going to show me, hey, you've got 30 minutes on Sunday and you've got 6 hours on Monday. So it's inaccurate data for the rest of the team to rely on if I have that, aside from the fact that I've thrown off all kinds of other projects and tasks. So this should be zeroed out. So the rule, we get to the end of the day in your shutdown routine and you have overdue tasks, you're obligated among your, like, to your other teammates to update the due date to when you can actually get it done and leave a comment and mention whoever's impacted by that. That comment should go on the parent task. Okay, so why do I like due dates as an approach for managing prioritization versus another way of doing this, using the priority flag? You can see that even here, I think. There's a priority flag here. But you can see it's a secondary sort beyond due date. So this is the most important thing to do today. That matters. But first, I care about what gets done on a specific date. That's our first order of prioritization. The reason I advocate for this approach is almost all other approaches that we've seen, and I've seen so many different ways of doing prioritization, go from a layer. A team might say, like, hey, this is, we're running EOS, and so our rocks are the most important thing, and then what comes after that, and then what comes after that. Or in an OKR situation, or whatever framework you're using, scaling up. So you've got all these like business operating frameworks, and then you've got different project management methodologies. Hey, we're running an agile methodology. Not always, and agile is the main exception to this, but most of the time what happens is where the rubber meets the road, when it actually comes time to complete this and to say, hey, let's go look at, does the overall amount of work that we have fit in the time that we have available to us? It always goes back to a due date driven approach anyways. And so my argument is, if you can get good at starting with due dates, you are saving yourself time because you're skipping yourself the step of having to go map out all these priorities first and then go translate that to due dates anyways. I'm totally fine with that happening in situations where that makes sense. But if we can start with, hey, here are our priorities now, the way that we're going to indicate that is using due dates, and we're going to make these due dates truly matter. You want to build an intolerant culture around due date shifting. So a culture of the due date is the due date. That means it's done by that date. And you can't have 9 people following that well and one person who does not care and is shifting it all over the place because it all falls apart. So that's the big argument for due date driven approach. The end goal, by combining these two principles, right? By combining a single source of truth, that means if it's not in ClickUp, it didn't happen, and making the due date, when we combine those two things together, people can walk into their day and have a clear picture of, here's everything that's on my plate that we knew at the beginning of the day. I realize for many roles, there are worlds, and we'll get to this when we talk about the principle of planning for the unplanned, where you don't know walking into the day what exactly will be on your plate. I know in my founder role right now that if I'm trying to work exactly 8 hours and I have 8 hours of estimated time scheduled out ahead of me when I walk in and I'm going through my startup routine, that I do not have enough bandwidth. I either have to accelerate through those things, shift some of those things, or I would have to be the rudest founder that you've met, which some days there's probably a world where that would be the right thing to do, to not have something come up in the day-to-day that I have to give some attention to. So I cannot plan out my day ahead of time. Like, I have 8 hours exactly of work planned out. I should be coming into my day with between 5 and 6 hours of work planned out. So I've got at least 25% of my time available for the things that pop up in the day-to-day. And I want to give my attention to, because it's a way to support or unblock other team members. So we'll talk more about that in Plan for the Unplanned. Again, this is all part of a greater methodology. These principles all work together. I hope that's helpful for you. And if you have any questions or want help making the due date actually be the due date or the done date for your team, reach out to us here at ZenPilot. We'd love to help you out.